So in the last little video, we talked about different types of punishment, philosophies, and what we end up trying to do. So let's spend a little bit of time, talking a little bit about these different punishments that we have, right? So let's take a moment to think about issues related to like a fine, right? So if you are, pay a fine, what exactly is it? What do you do with it, right? So if you think about a fine, right, this is a payment, right? We know this is also a punishment for failing to do something or to comply with something or something in that manner, right? At the same time, right, what does this actually do, right? It's not really like a rehab kind of thing, right? It's really not something that we are trying to fix or change someone. In some respects, right, we are trying to deter behavior, right? We don't want people to, whether it's parking illegally, whether that's something like, or whatever it is, right? Maybe it's a legal dump or whatever, right? So we have a fine that's maybe high enough to prevent people from doing it and maybe to discourage other people doing it from as well. The other part is, right, is that, in some ways we could view this as, like a retribution, for like doing something wrong. And like, so if it's like illegal dumping, you pay a fine that is equal to the cost of cleaning up your shit, right? Like if you're dumping it, in that case, right? But this isn't something that's really about incapacitation. We're not really locking people up, right? And in some ways, because, we are trying to make someone do right, acknowledge wrong, but it's not really about a restorative aspect, right? So we wouldn't say it's that. So just to highlight this real quick, so this is not really, a rehab kind of thing because we're not fixing anyone. And it's also not something where we are trying to restore someone, for justice, right? Because there's no like confronting the victim. There's none of that, right? So these things like don't really, apply in this circumstance. Have we ever done white? Man, we're gonna do white just cause. So let's think about something else, right? Like if we think about, a prison sentence, just a generic prison sentence that you get for committing a crime, right? So under this scope, what kinds of things do we expect, right? So again, there's definitely a deterrent understanding here that this is a reason why we give people that, both to say, hey, this is what happens when you break the law. You're going to serve your time, hopefully never do it again kind of deal, right? Same thing can happen for both individuals and the general public as well, right? Putting someone in prison also has the ability to incapacitate someone, right? They're locked up. They really can't harm anyone while they're inside in society, right? Like, of course, they could harm people while they're inside prison, but it's not really something they can do like inside, right? In some cases, perhaps this is restorative, but that's really not the main focus. So we're going to cross that one out because it's not the main focus, right? It's not really a restorative technique. In some ways, is it like if we're doing restitution? Probably not. But in some ways, we could also view this as a retribution for, the wrong that you committed. So you harm someone, you harm some individual, you harm property or something like that. As payback, we're taking perhaps your most valuable asset, which in this case would be time, by locking you up for an extended period, right? The other part to consider, right, is that so if we have those, right, you could potentially have this as rehab, right? So the goal being is that while you're in there, perhaps we could, teach you, like, so if you were a thief or you had a drug problem, we could enroll you in some sort of program and training to maybe treat your addiction or to give you job skills that you otherwise did not have, and potentially prevent you from doing stuff like that again, right? So that's really important. If we take like another little aspect, right? If we think about people who are in solitary confinement, so something within the prison, what is, something that would come out of here, right? One, this is definitely about incapacitating people. So they pose a threat to the prison population. Perhaps they're dealing drugs, or they fight, or they kill inmates or something. So there is like that part of it as well. It's also, in some ways, right, perhaps a deterrent to other prisoners, to say, like, hey, this is what happens if you act up too much. That is certainly a possibility. So that could be in that case. And I guess if people knew that you could end up in solitary confinement, that's really kind of the case. But there's really not any kind of rehabilitative reason why to include this. There's not really anything about paying back to society. We're not trying to restore you. This tends to be, focused on a punitive aspect. I think you guys can understand the kind of like the thought process of what's happening. So we'll only do, like one more kind of thing. Well, I guess we can do a couple more. If we think about, probation as a punishment, which is, the most common form of punishment used in this, primarily it's about rehabilitation, especially if you're a first-time offender, it is, or if you were a domestic abuser or something like that. The goal is to divert you to anger management, to understanding the impact that, your behaviors have on other people. You have to you have to stay clean, you have to show that you can facilitate, right? So you have to go to a program, whatever. There is a rehabilitative component. In some ways, right, you could view this as a deterrent, but that's really not the main purpose of it, right? People are like, oh, probation sucks, but it's not perhaps as miserable or fearful. No one is like, oh God, I might have to go to probation, right? Like that's more of like something associated with prison. So I wouldn't really say that it's a true deterrent. It's not really a retribution thing because we're not, the philosophy behind it is not about evening the scales per se. It's more about just helping and aiding someone get on it. Restoration is a possibility because we could have people come in and say hey, this is the victim, here's what you did to them. You have to meet with the victim, you have to apologize for your sins or whatever, and really make it an effective means of helping them understand what happened and hopefully, make you realize the error of your ways and, stop things really, right? So that part is important. And for the last one, I guess we will pick the death penalty. A popular topic, as always, right? So we think about the death penalty, right? There have been many arguments about what it will do. LSU colors. I didn't go to LSU, but that's what I think of when I think of purple and gold. We have the death penalty, right? One, we're definitely incapacitating people, right? You're put into lockdown. You're not really allowed, a lot of interaction with the outside world. There's not really anything there that, you can do. And besides, once you're dead, you're dead, right? So there's no risk of that happening, right, to you. There's definitely a retribution aspect where people are trying to get payback. So, it is perhaps the most clearest example of an eye for an eye. So you killed people, now we're going to kill you back kind of thing, right? Where we view it as that is the key of the punishment. This is the philosophy and understanding why it works. It's also a deterrent aspect where we are trying to say people, hey, you kill someone, we're going to kill you back, right? Which is very much the Texan way in that, right? Also, so for that person, right, that person is deterred forever because they're dead. But also to the general public is that the state government is not afraid to kill people if they deem it necessary, right? So, yeah, it is an important thing to consider is what's happening in that circumstance. Is that there is this deterrent effect happening. So, but there's definitely no rehabilitation, right? No one's really looking to say, well, we'll save you, you just got to do the death penalty, and then we'll try to fix you, right? No, you are kind of assumed to be a lost cause at this point, a forever danger to people incapable of reform, and that's why you get the death penalty, right? There's also no, restorative aspect. We're trying to make you whole, you apologize to a victim, or anything like that. There are instances where people will go and they'll confront the victim and the offender as they're being killed, but there's not really anything here where, it really works out just like that. So I think we'll end this video here. I think it gives you a good overview of the kind of like different punishments we have in society and sort of the philosophies underlying them in this case.